So you said you wanted some sort of a comp. Like, and again, I realize this is sports radio. There's no way for me to get through this conversation without heading to Twitter tonight to go through the 800 people who want to tell me that I hate Jonathan Kuminga and I'm mean because Jonathan's 21. Listen, I don't know any other way to say it. Jonathan is a phenomenal young basketball player who is putting, I love it when you see someone put in the work. He is putting in the work. He is improving. He is athletically gifted beyond 99.9% of the NBA. But I also look at his game, and it doesn't always look fluid to me. It doesn't always look like Jonathan Kuminga is fully confident in exactly how to go about breaking down a defense. He is still very raw, which one could look at and say, that means it's exciting because 2 years from now, he still won't be anywhere near his 25th birthday. And let me also say this, y'all, I might be wrong.
You've been wrong before.
Yes, I might be wrong.
Often wrong, seldom in doubt.
That's part of this. You have to play the projection game.
So who's your comp? Because I got a comp that...
Who's my comp for who? For Kuminga?
Yeah, because I've got a comp that I think is absolutely spot on.
Okay. I have a name. It's probably not a terribly fair one. Let me look at some numbers before I say this name because I don't want everybody to lose their bananas on me. Okay. Here's not my comp, but my concern. Okay? Because Jonathan is already, in my opinion, better than this player ever was. But I see overlap. Is it possible that Jonathan Kuminga could have just a drip of Darius Miles in him?
God, that is really really ripping.
You didn't hear what I said.
I know who Darius Miles is.
Jonathan's already better than Darius ever was. He's already better than him.
Darius Miles, guess how much money Darius Miles made in his career?
Too much.
Like $80 million.
Too much.
It's like if you said to me Darius Miles, I would say bust.
But that's
yet, you know what? I wish I was that level of a bust. I'd made $80 million in my career.
Average double digits in the NBA four times. Listen, he's not. Jonathan is. I got
one that's better.
But let me explain why it's a comp. Jonathan's already better than Darius Miles ever was. But the talk, the concept, the vibe around Darius was, oh my God, he could dunk with his mouth. He can fly. And he's 21. Wait till you see him develop. Jonathan is already better than Darius, but could Darius be a poor man's Jonathan Kuminga? In other words, I know Jonathan can fly. I know Jonathan is athletically gifted. I think Jonathan works harder than Darius ever did. Jonathan's already better. But could any of you admit that you are falling in love a little bit with jumping? And that's not enough. Jonathan has to be able to do other things. You can't shoot 32% from three and be a star wing in the NBA.
Oh, he's so he's more. He's so much more than a jumper, Willard.
I understand.
This guy's so explosive Larry, on his forays to the hoop.
He can't shoot well enough.
I get you, but here's my comp. Guy who played a long time in the NBA. By the way, Darius Miles, I just looked it up, 61.9 career million in career earnings. That's unbelievable for a guy who sucked. I mean, it was really a bust. But to me, Jonathan Kuminga, at the worst, is going to be Gerald Wallace. Gerald Wallace is a good comp. Another guy, came out of Bama, really runner, jumper type, not as refined. But he also entered the league at 19, and he played until he was his age 32 season. And he made one All-Star team. And I think he went for 18 and 10 that year. And he made the All-Star team one time. I'm not saying that he's going to be, I'm not saying he's Kawhi Leonard. I've had people tell me, Kuminga's going to emerge as Kawhi Leonard. Okay, that's lofty. That's lofty. But Gerald Wallace, I think, is totally reasonable. And Gerald Wallace played a long time and made an all-star team. And, if you look at Jonathan Kuminga, if he could play, Gerald Wallace played 16 years in the NBA. It's a damn good career.
Jonathan's going to have a very good career.
Yeah, this guy's going to play. I agree. This guy's going to play like 15 years in the NBA. He's going to probably make an all-star team somewhere along the line. He's going to continually improve.
I'm not trying to trade Jonathan Kuminga.
He's a really nice player. I'm not saying he's better than Markkanen. I just said I don't want to trade him.
I'm saying that I'd put him in that deal.
Yeah,
I wouldn't put him in any of the other deals.
No, I hear, and it's not. You're not ripping Kuminga to say you would trade him for Markkanen. That's not a criticism.
Yeah, I want the guy to stay. I'm not in the camp of those who feel that Jonathan Kuminga is going to be a legit NBA 1 or 2 on a deep playoff team and have it line up with Steph Curry's career. I'm not in that camp. Now, if lining up the rest of Steph Curry's career, if you're like you and you do the it is over, stop worrying about that, I get it. I totally get it. But I still think that I'm going to try to squeeze that orange. I did a whole thing yesterday about how I can't stand rebuilding.
Squeeze the orange. This is the part. But we have squeezed the orange. It was called the Celtics title. It was the win over the Celtics. They got 3, and then they unexpectedly got number 4. They got Otto Porter and a few guys in their prime. They made one last run. You got a nice little favorable playoff run. Wiggins got into a crazy rebounding mode, and they won a title. That was their extra title. They were supposed to get 3. They got 4. They're not supposed to get 5. This idea that they're supposed to get 5, they're not going to get 5.
I would never use the supposed to word.
Yeah. It's just like, it's asking a lot. Look at the teams right now, Mark, that are on top, whether it be Denver or Boston or Minnesota or OKC. They have a huge percentage of their players are star players in their prime. The Warriors have, who's in the prime of their career? Wiggins. That's it. Everybody else,
don't even know what
everybody else is too old, or a little bit too old, or a lot too old, or a little too young, or a lot too young. But when you only have one player, Andrew Wiggins, in his prime, you're not contending for titles.
But here's my issue with this. I feel like those who still want to prioritize Steph Curry get pinned into this idea of you're trying to squeeze the orange for too long. No, I like this better than the alternative, is what I'm saying. I don't know why so many people think that this rebuild idea guarantees you anything.
It doesn't, but it's a very opulent arena that you're going to have to attract people to. I don't think it's in your best interest or Joe's best interest to drive the franchise off the cliff. I compare it to the Giants.
No one's suggesting that.
Well, if you're trading all of your young assets,
I wouldn't trade all of my young assets.
You're basically going to have to if you're going to get Markkanen.
And I don't think that they will.
Yeah,
I don't think that they will.
And there's that.
Right. That is absolutely firmly my point on Markkanen. I doubt that it is going to happen. I'd love to see it happen, but the other way to look at this is, let's say you did get Lauri Markkanen, and let's say he did average 25 a night, and let's say you did give up Kuminga and draft picks for him, and then let's say in 2 years Steph Curry does play for another team. Well, then you can put Markkanen right back on the market when he's 29, and recoup your assets. That's what I'm saying. I'm going to play this out because
you just said the unthinkable. By the way, you just kind of threw in the unthinkable that Steph Curry's going to be playing somewhere else.
I don't think
we could do a freaking show on that alone.
We've done, I don't think it's unthinkable.
Yeah, that would be dramatic.
Yes,
that would be dramatic.
I just don't think we're there for that conversation yet. There's all kinds of ifs that need to play out.
Giants just lose to the Blue Jays 5-3. The Giants are kind of in a very similar deal to the Warriors. It's like the trade deadline's approaching, and they're within an arms distance of a wild card spot. We just watched a World Series between two teams that weren't all that good in the regular season in Texas and Arizona. So there's never been a more compelling time to say, well, do whatever you have to do just to get in there, right? So, you could argue that the Giants ought to sell out, all their prospects to try to get into the playoffs, because if they get into the playoffs, based on what we saw last year, anything can happen. But I don't know that I would do that if I were them. I think that's not necessarily the right plan. And for Golden State, even though you could sell out all your young assets and try to align with Steph, or you could just keep Steph and try to keep building and see what you can build.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the approach I would take, is just try to see if you can make a series of good moves in a row. I mean, I'm a believer. I don't know how you feel about this. I'm a believer that there are no shortcuts, especially if you're the Golden State Warriors. If the Lakers want to do it, maybe they can do it. But the Warriors, there are no shortcuts. You didn't get a title by shortcutting. People think you did because you signed Durant, but you didn't. You drafted Steph. You drafted Harrison Barnes. You drafted Festus. You drafted Draymond. You drafted all these guys. You drafted your way to a title. The Giants won 3 titles. They drafted Buster and Belt and Pablo and Kane and Bumgarner and Lincecum and all Vogelsong. They drafted all those guys. So that's the way you build. There are no shortcuts. So this idea that they're going to try to shortcut their way to another title by trading all these assets and picks, and I just, to me, it seems like
the difference with baseball,
like really a low percentage.
But
chance.
the difference in baseball is you can have the 20th pick in the draft, and you can still grab those people,
right?
And you can build, which you got to really strike gold to be able to do that. In the NBA, the Giants built all those draft picks you just mentioned. They did it while in the midst of having Barry Bonds and kind of contending sometimes.
But you could argue that the Warriors wouldn't have won any rings without a second-round draft choice named Draymond Green.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, that's kind of my point about this whole idea of stockpiling draft picks. Like, it guarantees you nothing. You know, someone asked us on the Xfinity Mobile text line yesterday, hey, for the Spurs, doesn't stinking for 5 years, isn't it worth it because you got Wemby? And I'm like, and then you stunk for a 6th year, and you're going to stink again this year? And I would argue Wemby is wonderful, but absolutely nothing is guaranteed. That does not mean, now that you got Wemby, that does not mean you're going to win a championship. And if you stink and stockpile draft picks, there's no guarantee there's going to be a Wemby, or that you're even going to get the top pick.
You could wind up with Anthony Bennett. You could wind up with Rasacher or whoever went number one this year.
Right. You could acquire picks 5 years ago, and then you get here and it's time to make a pick, and you're like, oh, there's nobody good in this draft.
Right.
I don't know, man. Like, again, I try to just stay in the moment, and right now,
but look who's won. Who won the title?
Yeah.
Boston. How did they win? Ainge made a bunch of good trades.
No doubt.
Who's one of the top young teams in the West? OKC. Why are they so great? Sam Presti's made a bunch of trades, getting all kinds of assets.
Right. But I could give you a bunch of teams who did that and it didn't work too.
Yeah.
Philadelphia has had picks and big names and names that in a way hit. Joel Embiid, and they got a big bubkiss for it.
Yeah.
So I
but
get
they've
it.
enjoyed the process.
I hope so. Telmo in the city here with Willard and Larry Krueger in for Dibs. And by the way, yes, the Giants lose 5-3, and FP is going to join us in 10 minutes. Hey, Telmo, what's up?
Hey, what's up? I just don't get it. I don't get this attachment to Jonathan Kuminga. I don't get this resistance to trading assets to get Lauri Markkanen. I don't get this idea of not going all in to surround Steph Curry with the best talent now as possible, because it's like everybody's like, oh, look, we have 3 birds in the bush, but it's like, do you want one in the hand? Because that's what we're talking about here. We just compared Kuminga to an 18-10 guy that's made the All-Stars once, but he played a long time. Like, you don't build around that. That doesn't fill arenas. We're talking about a guy that's a 24-8 player right now. He's 27 years old. It's bigs take longer to develop, so he's just coming into his own. He's going into the prime of his career in Lauri Markkanen. Why wouldn't we give up assets and the potential unknown to bring in a known commodity? They're not going to give up everybody. They had a good draft with TJD and Pajemski, and they can build around those guys. They just brought in 3 other players that are veterans that know how to play ball that would make that already make the team better. So you put Lauri Markkanen on this team right now with Steph Curry, those 3 veterans they just brought in, a couple young guys with talent. and I'm talking about, Pajenski and TJD, and I don't think they have to give up Wiggins, Moody, and Kuminga, so you're still going to have one or potentially even two of those, and you have a team that can legitimately compete for a high seed, and depending on how things go, a championship, because you have to go based off of the best case scenario assumption. Last year, everybody assumed Denver would be in the finals, and nobody assumed the Mavericks would be in the finals, and look how it turned out. But the Mavericks made some good trades. They brought in talent, and they found a way to get there while Denver faltered. So I think while you have one of literally the top two commodities in basketball on your team in Steph and Curry, whether I'm not saying he's top two player, but I'm saying a basketball commodity, he's top two. He's filling seats. He's great for the franchise. While you have him, and he's still a guy that can give you 28, 30 a night consistently. You put him on a guy with a bona fide number two, a 24 and 8 guy that can spread the perimeter out, because that's been the problem right now. Any defense can attack Steph Curry on the perimeter, and they have no shooters. And you're going to be a factor in the West. So I don't understand all this resistance and if we have draft picks and this. Like you said, the 76ers, Oklahoma, yeah, they had a good year. Did they win a championship? No. Well, is there a guarantee they'll win one next year? No. So it's like you have Steph Curry, you have Draymond Green, you have some young guys that you don't have to trade away. If you can get somebody like Lauri Markkanen, I think you can make a real run. There's no guarantees for a championship, but you put yourself in contention.
Yeah, Telmo, I'm with you largely, and I feel like the sound of our conversation kind of ended up in a spot of where I'm like pro trading Jonathan Kuminga. I said for that trade and that trade only. That's where I am. This is situational, and I would say player by player, yes or no. But boy, it's got to be on the table. And is that not what Steve Kerr just said here?
There's very few players in the league who are not talked about in trade discussions. Steph Curry is not being discussed in trade talks. Everybody else is, if you went down the list of NBA teams, the Lakers probably not talking to anybody about LeBron. Everybody's got maybe one or two guys who they're off the table. So the vast majority of the NBA, the players are constantly, going to be discussed in trade talks because everyone's trying to do the same thing, which is improve their team.
Okay. So is Jonathan Kuminga's name Steph Curry?
And we're assuming tons here, by the way. We're assuming Utah wants Kuminga. You kind of said before they might not even want Kuminga.
I don't think they're trading him at all.
Yeah.
Or they're trading
maybe they don't want to trade Markkanen, or maybe they're holding out for 5 number ones.
Yep.
So we're having like a debate, and there's so many unknowns here that it's kind of hard to, really buckle down on this thing. But overall, my general thought is I'm not in a rush to move Jonathan Kuminga.
No, I agree with you
I think
there.
Jonathan Kuminga is one of the best young players in the game.
I agree. I'm in no rush to move Jonathan Kuminga, and for most trade conversations, I'd say no. Yeah. For most.
Like Jimmy Butler. A lot of people wanted to move him for Jimmy Butler.
No.
Like, no. He's 35. You can't do that.